Good evening, my friend. You've made it through another long day, and now the night has arrived to take care of you. There's nothing else you need to do. No tasks, no worries, no rush. Just breathe and let your body settle. Go ahead, pull the blanket closer. Feel how soft it is against your skin. You're safe here. And tonight, we're going to drift through a very old story. A story about those who were never meant to be remembered. The ones who walked in silence, who vanished into crowds, who solved problems the world didn't want to speak of, and then disappeared again. Medieval assassins, not the kind you've seen in movies, not acrobats in white cloaks leaping from towers. No, the real ones, the quiet ones, the forgotten. If that kind of slow journey brings you a little peace, you can leave a like, subscribe, or share where you're listening from and what time the night found you. We always love seeing how far our sleepy little community stretches. For now, let yourself drift. Let the edges of your day blur and the stillness of history settle in. Close your eyes if you haven't yet, and ask yourself, what does it really mean to disappear? Let's begin. In the Middle Ages, assassins weren't trained in mountaintop temples or hidden monasteries. They weren't scholars or warriors of destiny. They were desperate men, ordinary, mostly poor. Some had once been soldiers, broken by war, thrown aside. Others were peasants, too invisible to be missed. A few had been thieves, hiding from the noose, and all of them had no other choice. It wasn't a profession. It was a last resort. There was no guild, no uniform, no oath, only the cold truth. If you had the nerve to kill and the will to vanish, someone, somewhere would pay. But tell me, friend, would you? Would you take a blade for coin if it meant food on the table? Would you hide in a stable for 3 nights, waiting for one man to walk past the wrong door? Hard to say, isn't it? Let's keep walking. There were no pensions, no medals, no freedom waiting at the end of the road. You didn't retire, you disappeared or died. Assassins didn't sign contracts. They received notes, short, vague, smudged with charcoal. Sometimes the innkeeper after midnight, or red cloak, west gate, no witnesses, nothing else. You weren't expected to succeed every time, but failure meant death. Not just for you, for everyone who knew you, which is why no one knew you. Clients avoided names. Colleagues avoided eye contact. Even the innkeepers who served these men kept their eyes low. And if you sat in a corner and didn't move for an hour, no one asked why. They didn't eat much. A crust of bread, maybe something stolen, cold water from a barrel in the alley. There was no home, no key in a pocket, just straw in an abandoned loft or a dry corner behind a tannery. They woke early. They listened to footsteps before opening their eyes. They walked with a purpose, or rather, without a purpose others could detect. Some dressed as monks, others as peasants. A few wore scraps of a guard's old tunic, enough to confuse the eye, nothing more. And they waited, because most of the work was waiting. Waiting for the street to empty, waiting for the candle to go out, waiting for the target to walk. Alone, a blade, always a blade, sometimes a cord, sometimes powder, bitter and unpredictable. Poisons were tricky. You had to understand dosage. And medieval kitchens were chaotic places, full of fire, shouting, and dozens of hands. Slipping something into food wasn't elegant. It was messy, risky, often fatal to the wrong person. So most preferred the knife. It didn't lie. It didn't need a label. It ended things. Quietly, if you were close enough. Forget elaborate costumes. There were no wigs, no theater paint, no wax noses. There was dirt, and more dirt. An assassin's disguise was nothing more than looking like someone no one wanted to look at. Matted hair, a limp, a cough, a patchy beard. They didn't become someone else. They became no one. And the more invisible you were, the longer you stayed alive. You might think they had a circle, a code, but that's a myth. Every contact was a risk. Every glance could be a betrayal. Even your employer might not know your face, and if he did, he'd forget it the moment you walked away. Friendship was dangerous because a friend might ask where you went. A friend might know your name, and in this life, a name was a death sentence. What happened when they failed? When an assassin failed, it wasn't quiet. Failure meant noise. It meant guards, swords, fire, crowds. It meant a body strung up in the square, and people tossing rotten food at the one who dared act from the shadows. And after that, no one hired from that city again, and so, if you were wise, you vanished before the job even ended. Run, hide, disappear before they even knew the job was done. Success wasn't the end. It was the beginning of running again, because there was no other way. Because when you are born into a world where your name doesn't matter, sometimes you decide to become the shadow that shapes others' fates, not for pride, not for power, but because the world never gave you anything else. And even in that quiet role, in that terrible, thankless place, you kept walking. Take a breath, friend. You've just walked through the early hours of a life that was never meant to be seen, and we're not done yet. We'll keep going, gently, through whispers, through history, through the cracks in old stone walls. But for now, rest your eyes. Let the silence fill in around you, and let the story carry you forward. You wake before the sun, not because you want to, but because you must. Assassins do not sleep in, not if they want to stay alive. There's always someone looking, always a chance the wrong person saw too much yesterday. So you rise quietly, and before you leave the damp corner, you've called home a cellar, a stable, a place between walls no one else wants. You check your tools. There aren't many. No glowing blades, no mechanical wonders, just what you can carry, what you can hide. A small knife, sharpened so often the blade is half its original size. A bit of cloth soaked in something dark, not strong enough to kill, but strong enough to make someone sleep. A needle dipped in bitter herbs, a vial, glass, wrapped in leather, filled with a liquid you barely understand. They call it poison, but it could just as easily kill you as your target. Poison, you've learned, is not magic. It's unpredictable, temperamental, like a sleeping dog with one eye open. Too little, and the victim just grows sick. Too much, and they die too quickly, or not at all. And medieval kitchens, they're chaos, boiling pots, roaring fires, servants moving in and out like bees in a hive. To slip a drop of anything into a cup or bowl means more than stealth. It means timing, precision, nerves of stone, and even if you succeed, who's to say they'll eat it? Some noblemen have tasters. Others eat only food they watched being prepared. Some eat nothing at all when they feel watched. It's a gamble, a deadly one. That's why the knife is always your friend. It doesn't lie. It doesn't boil over or evaporate. It doesn't get lost in soup. It's there, cold, simple, final. But a knife makes noise, leaves evidence, blood, screams, and so, if you can, you avoid using it. You plan instead. You plan for days, weeks, watching the house, counting the guards, listening to conversations. Every step of a patrol must be memorized. Every servant's face must be recognized. You become a part of the scenery, a shadow in the alley, a statue in the chapel, a hunchbacked monk with no voice, sweeping the floor. Your disguise is not perfect. There are no wigs, no makeup artists, just dirt, stolen clothes, a bent posture, a muttered word in a dialect you barely know. You smear ash on your face to hide your cheekbones. You limp when people pass by, then straighten the moment they leave. It's not about looking perfect. It's about looking forgettable. Because if someone remembers your face, your mission is already a failure. Still, even with all that, you never feel safe. You sit in taverns with your back to the wall. You drink only what you've watched being poured. You eat nothing that smells too sweet. And every creak of a floorboard, every sudden silence in a room sends a shiver down your spine. You live alone, always, not by choice. but because it's the only way. You cannot afford friends. What would you say to them? Where you've been, what you've done. Even clients don't know your name. They leave coins under bricks. They whisper instructions in the dark. If they ever try to thank you, you leave. Gratitude is dangerous. It binds people together, and that is something you cannot risk, because trust kills. Other criminals don't like you. They fear you, avoid you. To them, you're something unholy, something cursed, not quite human, a figure from bad dreams, the man in the alley who never speaks but always stares. Even those who pay you look away when they speak. And when your job is done, when the blood is cleaned and the body cold, they often pretend they never met you. You are not a man. You are a tool, one they would rather forget. Sometimes you wonder what you look like now. You haven't seen your own face in days, weeks. You avoid still water, reflective glass, not because you're vain, but because you're afraid. Afraid of what you might see staring back, the lines under your eyes, the gray in your beard, the silence in your gaze. What does it mean to live this way? To breathe without ever truly being seen? To walk in and out of people's lives like a ghost, leaving only absence behind? And yet, you keep going, because this job, this life, is the only one left to you. You've tried other paths. You've begged. You've fought in wars. You've stolen. And every time, you ended up back here, back in the shadows, because the truth is, you're good at it, not proud, never proud, but efficient. You survive, and in this world, that's more than most. Now, close your eyes, just for a moment. Feel the cold stone beneath your feet, the smell of damp wool on your cloak, the weight of the blade on your hip. Tonight you will walk again, but not yet. For now, let the tension slip from your shoulders. You're safe here. No one is watching. No one is hunting. You are only remembering, only imagining, and the world outside can wait. Breathe in and out. In the next chapter, we'll follow you into a job, one of many. We'll walk beside you through its planning, its fear, and its consequences. But for now, sleep walks beside you. Let it take your hand. Let it guide you deeper. Just drift. It begins with a name, not one spoken aloud, of course, just a piece of parchment, folded twice and slipped beneath a stone behind the butcher's stall. You find it in the early morning, before the vendors arrive, while the street still smells of ash and empty barrels. You don't unfold it there, not in the open. You wait, always, because even the way you read the name must be hidden. Later, in a crumbling cellar with only a single candle burning, you open the note. It says, "The Spice Merchant, 2 sons, 2nd floor, watches the street from dawn to dusk, never prays, often alone. There's no signature, there never is. The coin was already there the day before, hidden in a pouch beneath a broken stair. You don't know who wants him gone, maybe a rival, maybe a jealous brother, maybe a widow whose child died from spoiled goods. It doesn't matter. You read the name once more, then you burn the paper. From that moment, he becomes your world. You begin to watch him, not from across the street. That's too obvious. Instead, you sweep floors at the inn across the square. You carry water buckets. You lean against walls with a cloth over your mouth, pretending to cough. You become nothing, invisible, but your eyes never leave him. He is older than you expected, gray at the temples, moves slowly but with care. He counts every coin, watches every cart. He speaks kindly to his apprentices, but only when others are near. You see the patterns when his sons arrive, when they leave, when his guards turn their backs, how he rubs his hands before he eats, how he double bolts the back door. Every detail is a thread, and you are weaving them into a net. You wait 6 days, longer than you'd like, but patience is the only luxury you can afford. And then the chance arrives. On the 7th day, his sons are gone. His guard is drunk, laughing with a servant girl in the alley. And the merchant? He is alone. The back door, you already know, is old wood. The bolt, rusted. Your hands do not shake as you enter. They do not hesitate, because hesitation means death. Inside it is quiet. The smell of cinnamon hangs in the air. Dried oranges, sweat. You move like you've moved 100 times before. Soft shoes, measured steps. One creak, and you pause. Another, and you stop breathing. You reach the stairwell, and you listen. Always listen. Above, he is muttering to himself, sorting ledgers, most likely. You draw the blade, small, blackened, familiar. You kiss the edge once, not out of reverence, but routine. Then you climb. The floor beneath his feet creaks louder than you expected. He hears nothing. He has grown used to silence. You are only 2 steps away when he notices. But that's 1 step too late. The blade finds his side, just below the ribs. He gasps. No scream, just a small sound, like a prayer someone forgot the words to. You hold him as he falls, not out of mercy, but to lower him quietly. The blood comes fast. You don't watch his face. You never do. But your hands remember the weight of him, the last twitch, the final breath. Then it's over, and your work begins. You clean nothing. You do not linger. You exit as you came, fast, quiet, low to the ground. The alley smells of spoiled milk. The guard is gone now. Lucky, or maybe unlucky. You will not return this way again, and now the real danger begins. Because every second after the kill is a second you might be seen. You do not run. Running draws attention. Instead, you walk with purpose, like a man late for prayer. Your clothes are plain, stained. You have a limp now, one you've practiced in the dark. At the city gate, the guards don't even glance your way. By nightfall, you are 3 villages away, washing your hands in a stream that never asked your name. You think of him, briefly, not his face, not his voice, just the weight and the silence that followed. The job is done. The coin is yours. But you do not feel rich. You feel hollow, like a room after the fire has gone out, still warm but empty. You do not speak for 2 days, not because you're hiding, but because your throat has forgotten how. And in that silence, doubt grows. You ask yourself questions. Why him? Was it for greed, revenge, fear? Did he deserve it? But the questions never lead anywhere. They circle back on themselves like wolves in a cage. So eventually, you stop asking. You sleep beneath the stars that night, wrapped in an old wool cloak, your blade beside you, your boots still on, because in this life you never sleep deep, not truly. The dream that comes is strange. You're back in your childhood village, but it's empty, only fog and distant whispers. You look for your mother, your brother, but find only silence. You wake cold and older, and the wind does not remember your name. You rise, you pack, and somewhere far away, another piece of parchment waits, folded twice, hidden beneath a stone. You've changed your name 5 times in 3 months. You don't remember the first one anymore. Names are dangerous. They anchor you to something, to a place, a past, a body. But you need to be unanchored, forgettable. You become that quiet one, or the limping priest, or the mute with the scar. You exist only for moments, glimpsed, then forgotten, and that's how you survive. But survival is not peace, not anymore, because now, even in sleep, you feel eyes on you, not real ones. Eyes in your mind, in the walls, in the sound of leaves brushing the shutters at night. You eat fast, alone, drink only what you carry yourself, sleep with your back against stone and your knife under your hand. Even children laughing too loudly make you tense. You've become a creature of suspicion, of shadows. You no longer trust markets, taverns, churches. Even priests might speak your name if offered coin. And coin always speaks louder than fear. Sometimes you wonder if you're even being hunted. No proof. But when you walk through the village square, and a baker turns too quickly to hide his face, when the tavern girl stumbles on your fake name, though you told her twice, your skin prickles like the cold before snow. You know the signs. You've been the signs, and that means someone is watching you now. Once, long ago, or maybe it was just last year, you made the mistake of staying too long in one place. The coin was good, the people polite, the food warm. You thought perhaps this could be different. You even let someone laugh with you, once, and for a moment you laughed back. But then came the whisper, a soldier asking a farmer if he'd seen a quiet man with a scar above his eye. You didn't wait to hear the answer. That night you left before the candles burned low. You never saw the woman again, the one with the warm voice, the one who said you reminded her of her brother, the one who asked your name and you almost told her. You burned the cloak she'd sewn for you. You kept the bread, though. You ate it cold by a riverbank, and it tasted like guilt. That's when you knew you are not meant to be known. Not anymore. You are a blade, nothing more, and blades are kept hidden until needed. Even other criminals avoid you. You see it in their eyes. Thieves, smugglers, highwaymen, they'll drink together, brawl together, even trust each other in moments of desperation. But you? They cross the room when you enter, not out of hatred, out of fear, because they don't understand you, because you remind them of the noose, of cold justice that doesn't wear a uniform. They think you don't bleed, that your blood is black or missing altogether, and you let them think it. It keeps you alive, but it makes you hollow. No one to share a fire with, no one to speak a single honest word to, no one to say, "Today was hard," and mean it. You whisper to the wind now, sometimes just to hear your own voice, sometimes just to remember that you have a voice. But the wind doesn't answer, and neither does the forest, or the stars, or the gods you stopped praying to years ago. You tried once, lit a candle in a ruined chapel, whispered a name, your real one maybe, asked for forgiveness, but no warmth came, no voice, no sign, just a breeze through broken glass. Maybe that was your answer. Maybe silence is all you deserve. You think of all the faces you've seen go still beneath your hands. Some were cruel, some were kind, some were afraid, some smiled. That's the part that haunts you most, the ones who smiled, as if they knew, as if they welcomed it. Sometimes you wonder if they see you in dreams, if their ghosts travel with you step by step. You feel them at night, not as sounds, not as sights, just weight, like something sitting on your chest. And yet you keep going, because the road doesn't end. Not for people like you. You walk and walk and walk until the world blurs. Villages all start to look the same. Faces blend, voices echo, and every doorway might be the last one you see. Because the truth is, you could become the target easily. You know too much. You've seen too much. And the people who paid you, they don't want reminders. You're not a servant. You're a liability. You've seen the look, the hesitation, the flicker of doubt, the brief moment where a client wonders if paying you is just the first step in becoming your next victim. And if you ever flinch, if you ever look tired, if you ever ask for more than agreed, they might decide it's safer to be rid of you permanently. So you leave before that moment comes, always. But one day you won't. One day you'll stay too long, and the door will creak open behind you, and someone else will be holding the knife. And maybe then you'll understand what they felt when they saw your shadow approach. But not tonight. Tonight, the fire is still burning. Your knife is still close. Your breath is still warm in the cold air, and the darkness still welcomes you. Rest now, just for a moment. Let the fear melt like wax near a flame. No one is here. No one is watching. You are safe. Only imagining, only remembering, and the night is on your side. Not every job goes right. Sometimes the window doesn't open. Sometimes the servant comes back early. Sometimes the blade misses. And when that happens, it's not just the job that ends. It's everything, because in your world, failure isn't measured in shame. It's measured in fire, in iron, in the sound of boots chasing your echo through stone alleys. You remember your first failure. You were still young then, still thought you could run faster than fear. The job was simple. A miner noble, sickly, paranoid, kept to himself. You studied him for a week, waited until the guards got drunk. You thought you timed it right. But as you stepped through the garden, someone screamed. Not a guard, a child, a little boy. You hadn't seen behind the hedges, and just like that, the whole world changed. Torches lit, bells rang. Your face was no longer a secret. You escaped that night, but barely. 2 arrows found your leg. You crawled through mud and roots, bleeding and silent. 3 days later, you were fevered and shivering in the rafters of an abandoned barn. You don't remember how you healed. You only remember the pain. And the lesson? There are no clean exits. There is no mercy for failure. If they catch you, they don't simply kill you. They make a lesson of you, because your death must erase the memory of your life. You've seen it in town squares, in marketplaces, on rainy mornings when the sky weeps with the condemned. They tie you to the post. They read your crimes. They dress it up in ritual. Justice, they call it. But everyone knows what it really is. A warning. You once saw a man dragged through the mud by his wrists, his fingers broken, his face beaten. They called him a poisoner. He was hung by the neck, then cut down while still gasping, and burned alive before the crowd. His ashes were swept into the sewer, his name never spoken again. And you watched from a rooftop, not because you wanted to, because you had to. You needed to know what happens when your face is remembered, what it costs. Another time, you heard a story from a tavern drunk about a killer who got too bold. He started leaving signs, little calling cards, symbols on doorways, a bit of theater, and people began to whisper about him. At first, it thrilled him. He believed himself a legend, until one night he knocked on the wrong door, and 5 men were waiting. They didn't kill him quick. They pulled his teeth out one by one, cut his fingers, made him walk the town square blindfolded before the blade fell. His mistake? Wanting to be seen. You've never forgotten that. There is no fame in this line of work, no glory, no songs, no monument. If they remember you, it means you failed. Success is silence. Success is vanishing. And yet, failure waits everywhere. Sometimes it isn't even your fault. You complete the job. You vanish clean, but then the client disappears, and suddenly the guards are asking questions. The town watch posts sketches. Someone swears they saw you. Someone else wants the reward. And just like that, you're a fugitive, even when you did everything right. You learn to run before they chase, to sleep in short bursts, to burn anything that holds your scent. Once, you even buried a blade, your favorite one, just to avoid being tracked by its unique hilt. Another time, you walked into a new village barefoot, because your boots had been described. You bought new ones from a farmer's wife with the last of your coin. She gave you a strange look when you didn't give a name. You said nothing, just nodded, and kept walking. And now, even in places where no one knows your face, you feel the pull of unseen eyes. Paranoia, they say. But you know better, because this life doesn't end in comfort. It ends in shadows or fire. Those are the only paths. You've known killers who tried to quit. Move to the countryside. Start over. One became a miller, had a wife, 2 sons, but someone found him, someone remembered, and one morning the village awoke to a mill burned to ash, with nothing left but smoke and questions. Another tried to flee overseas, paid a sailor double for safe passage, but the ship never left port. They found his body under the docks, throat slit, coin still clutched in his hand, because in this life, secrets are currency. And you are a vault of them. Every client who hired you knows it. Every name you've taken every room you've hidden in, every whisper you've heard. It all adds weight, and the more you carry, the harder it becomes to stay ahead. That's why you keep moving, why you trust no one, why you leave no trace, because the day you stop might be the day someone comes to finish your story. And when they do, you hope they're kind, you hope they're fast, you hope they're like you. Let that thought settle now. Let it drift. You are still here, still breathing, still unseen, and the night is quiet again. For now, close your eyes, let your grip loosen, let the fire dim. You've earned a few moments of stillness. In the next chapter, we'll walk deeper into your methods, into the patience, the ritual, the masks you wear. But tonight, just rest. You are safe in silence. And silence for people like you is the only true reward. Disguise is not a costume. It is not just a robe or a hood or a wig. In your world, a disguise is something deeper, something you wear under the skin. It begins with the way you move. A noble walks with his chin high, his back straight, expecting space to part around him. A beggar hunches, avoids eye contact, makes himself small. A guard walks like he owns the ground. You've worn all these steps. You've studied them, the rhythm, the pauses, the weight, because walking wrong can cost you everything. But movement is only the start. Next is posture. You've spent whole days leaning against walls, pretending to cough just to make your back curve. You've soaked rags in wine and rubbed them under your eyes to create the illusion of illness. Sometimes you even limp, not because you're hurt, but because someone once saw you walk with a limp in another town. And if they ever see you again, they'll be looking for it. You've learned the power of mud. Mud hides color, hides scars, hides fear. It tells the world, I'm nothing. I belong in the corner. It's not flattering. It's not heroic. But it works. And then there's clothing. You don't need fine silks or tailored coats. You need layers, things you can strip off and discard in seconds. A tunic that reverses color, a scarf that becomes a sash, a cloak you can abandon in a stream. Once you wore 4 full outfits, one atop another, and peeled them away between alleys like bark from a tree. By the time the guards reached the street, they were looking for a soldier in blue, and you were a stable boy in brown. But the most important disguise is in your face, not what it looks like, what it says. Fear is loud. Pride is louder. You've learned to keep your face quiet, eyes half-lidded, mouth still, breaths slow. If someone looks at you, you become background, like a broom leaning against a wall, like a bucket in a stable. Forgettable, You've even changed your voice, not just tone, accent. You can speak like a dock worker in the morning, a priest at noon, and a merchant by evening. You stutter, you whisper, you mispronounce words on purpose, because clarity is a trail, and you leave none. You've also learned silence, how to answer questions with shrugs, how to bow instead of speak, how to disappear inside yourself so fully that even people staring at you forget they saw you. And over time, this becomes natural. You no longer remember how you used to walk, how you used to sound, what your real face looked like when you were happy, and that's the cost. To become no one, you must forget someone. You lose pieces of yourself, little ones at first, a habit, a favorite word, a laugh, then bigger ones, a memory, a feeling, a name. But it's the only way, because in your world, the only people who survive are the ones who vanish. You once watched a man, a real master, change his identity 3 times in a single day. Morning, a blind beggar with a rattling cup. Afternoon, a traveling scribe with ink-stained hands. Evening, a noble steward with silver rings. You watched from a rooftop, fascinated, envious. Later, you tried to follow his steps, but by nightfall, he was gone, like smoke. You never saw him again. But he taught you something, not with words, just with presence. Disguise isn't about hiding who you are. It's about becoming what they already expect to see. Because most people, even in times of fear, only notice what fits the pattern. A merchant expects servants to bow. A guard expects peasants to flinch. A priest expects sinners to cry. Give them what they expect, and they'll never see anything else, even if they look right at you. You once walked past a man who had a sketch of your face in his hand. Your heart nearly froze, but you limped, coughed, muttered in a farmer's accent, and held a bucket of turnips. He didn't even pause. That night, you burned the turnips, not because they were bad, because they reminded you of how close death had come. Your disguises protect you, but they also bury you. Each one is a mask, and beneath every mask, another, until eventually you don't know what's real. And sometimes that's what breaks a man. You've heard of it. Killers who start talking to themselves in voices that aren't theirs. Ones who forget their own language. Who wake screaming from dreams where they wore the wrong face and were caught. You don't scream in your sleep, but you do talk. You know, because once a child heard you. You'd taken shelter in an abandoned mill, and the next morning she was there, standing in the doorway, staring. She said, "You were crying." You said nothing. She asked your name. You said, "No one." And she nodded, as if that made perfect sense, as if she knew that some people are meant to disappear. you gave her the last of your bread, and when she left, you watched her go, wishing just for a moment that you could be seen. But not today. Today you have another mask to wear, another walk to mimic, another face to forget, and, as always, another name to become. Let your breath slow now. Feel the stillness returning. You are between identities, a perfect silence, a moment of nothing. And in your world, nothing is the safest place to be. Let it hold you. Let it carry you. Sleep in the pause between names. Drift just a little further. You'd think the danger ends when the job is done, that the moment the blade is clean, the blood dried, the door closed behind you, you're free. But it doesn't work like that, not in your world, because the most dangerous person in your life is the one who paid you. Clients come in all forms. A whisper in a tavern, a letter tucked into a bread cart, a rich man with shaking hands, a widow who doesn't cry, and sometimes they don't even look at you. They leave the message. You leave the mark. That's how it's supposed to work. But people are messy. They make promises, then get scared. They say no witnesses, but forget you were one too. They trust you until they realize what you are. Then they don't trust anyone. You've seen it happen. Once, a merchant hired you to kill his rival, a silversmith who, he claimed, had poisoned his brother. You did the job, clean, quiet. But when you returned to collect the second half of the coin, he tried to kill you, poisoned your drink, not enough to kill, but enough to slow you. He wanted to make it look like a robbery, another faceless corpse in a city that forgets it's dead. But you had learned by then, you never drink what's handed to you. You smiled, you thanked him, and you never came back. 2 nights later, his shop burned. You didn't do it, but you didn't cry for it either, because trust is a blade without a handle. It cuts both ways. That's why you never give your name, why you never work for the same client twice. You change towns, change faces. Sometimes you even fake your own death. A burnt cloak, a pile of ash, a rumor whispered in the right ear. You disappear before they can disappear you. But sometimes even that isn't enough. Some clients want control. They want to own you, like a dog on a leash. Do one job, then another, until the leash tightens and your world becomes smaller. You knew a man like that once. He was clever, rich, spoke sweetly. He gave you good targets, political, profitable. Each time he paid on time. Each time you came back. Until one day you tried to leave. You said, "No more." He smiled, said he understood. But 3 nights later, someone followed you. Someone skilled, too skilled. You escaped, barely, with a broken rib and a bleeding side. You never went near that city again, but you learned. The moment a client thinks he owns you, you're already dead. And yet, there are worse fates than death. One is exposure, when a client is caught and speaks your name, even if it's not your real name, even if it's just the pale one or the man with the limp. That's all it takes. A description, a rumor, a reward posted in the marketplace, and suddenly every child in town is looking for someone who matches the story. And if they find you, even if you did nothing wrong, there will be no trial, no defense, just a rope and a crowd. That's why you move at night, why you sleep in ruins and barns, why you never stay longer than a shadow's length, because people don't need proof to kill you. They just need a reason. And if that reason is fear, it's more than enough. So you learn to listen, not just to words, to tone, to hesitation, to the sound of a coin pouch being touched before a sentence ends. You look at their hands, trembling, too steady. You watch their eyes. Do they flinch when they speak the target's name? Do they glance at the door too often? And if the answer is yes, you don't take the job, because some jobs are traps. Sometimes the target isn't who they say. Sometimes the target is you. You once found a note with a name scrawled in hurried ink. It said, "The cloaked man who watches the square." It was you. You burned the note, left that town within the hour, didn't stop walking for 2 days. You never found out who wrote it. A betrayed client, a vengeful cousin, a lover? It doesn't matter, because in your world, intentions mean nothing, only results, and you intend to survive, but survival comes with silence. You can never tell your story, never write it down, never admit you exist, because the moment someone knows too much, you become their target. And in a world full of knives, you've learned that the only way to stay safe is to never be held. No debts, no names, no promises, only shadows and silence. Let that silence surround you now. Let it press gently against your ribs. No one is asking questions here. No one is reaching for a blade. You are still, unseen, safe. Let your eyes grow heavy again. Let the thoughts drift like leaves on a black river. In the next chapter, we'll speak of failure again, but not your own, the failure of those who came before, the forgotten ones, the unlucky ones, and how every assassin eventually meets the edge of someone else's story. But for now, sleep finds you again, and this time you don't run. Not everyone makes it. You know that better than most. The road behind you is full of shadows, not just yours, but theirs, the ones who tried, the ones who failed, You don't remember all their names, but you remember the moments they vanished, some with a sound, some without a trace, and each of them taught you something. There was Arlen, once known in whispers as the rat of the gutters. He was clever, small, could squeeze through places most people never noticed. He used to boast he could take a man's life without ever touching him. Poison, a dropped brick, a candle lit too close to a curtain. For a while it worked, until he grew confident. Too confident. He started leaving marks, symbols, a rat carved into a doorframe. He wanted to be remembered. He got his wish. The city watch hung him by his feet in the square, naked, bruised, and silent. They let him bleed out in the rain. The people clapped, and no one ever spoke his name again. Then there was Lisbeth, quiet, careful, almost invisible. She was the best you'd ever seen with poisons. She once told you, "If they taste it, I've already failed." She used to spend hours watching her targets, not just their routines, but their habits. Did they wipe their mouth twice after eating? Did they drink with the left hand? Did they trust the servant who poured the wine? She was precise, but even precision can fail. Her last job was a nobleman with a reputation for cruelty. She watched him for 2 weeks, timed everything, but what she didn't know was that he had switched goblets with his brother that morning. The brother died. The noble lived. He didn't call the guards. He called a hunter. She lasted 3 days in the woods before they dragged her back. They say her hands were broken before they hanged her. She never begged. You don't know if that makes it better or worse. Then there was Merrick. He didn't die because of pride or failure or noise. He died because someone else failed. You were working in the same region, 2 towns apart. You never met, but you heard his name from the same source who paid you both. He was quiet, professional, until the wrong man spilled the wrong secret to the wrong ears. They came looking for Merrick. They found him. They didn't ask questions. They didn't knock. They set his house on fire with him inside. No warning, no trial, just fire. You remember standing in the field nearby, watching the smoke, not crying, not praying, just learning. Sometimes your death isn't about you. It's about the noise others make, the trails others leave, the secrets that leak through the cracks of mouths that should have stayed shut. That's why you work alone, always. No partners, no apprentices, no one to speak your name, even by accident, because you've seen it. A whisper becomes a rumor becomes a sketch becomes a scaffold, and all it takes is a single careless word. You once passed through a village where no one looked you in the eye, a quiet place. You liked it, until an old woman with cloudy eyes said something as you walked by. Another one, like the last. You froze, asked nothing, said nothing, but you left. And later, when you asked around in the next town, you learned that an assassin had died there a year earlier, beaten, drowned, buried in a ditch. No one remembered his name, only that he came from the forest, didn't speak much, and paid with strange coin. They thought you were him come again, so you changed your coat, your hair, your voice, and kept moving, because someone else's memory almost became your death. In this life, you carry the weight of ghosts, not just the ones you've made, the ones who looked like you, walked like you, vanished like you. You inherit their danger, their mistakes, their silence. Sometimes late at night you wonder if someone will inherit yours, if one day a stranger will walk through a town you once passed through and be punished for your sins. And you know the answer. Yes, that's how it works. There is no clean slate, just layers of forgotten stories, staining the same road. But that's the cost. You pay it every day, with silence, with solitude, with steps that never echo in the same place twice. The only monument you will ever have is not being mentioned. The only legacy is no one remembering your face. And somehow you've made peace with that, because the alternative is fire, steel, rope, and a name carved into a confession you never gave. Let that thought fade now. Let the stories settle like ash. You are still breathing, still moving, still safe. And the ghosts, they're only shadows. Let them drift. Let them whisper. They cannot follow you here. Not tonight. In the next chapter, we'll speak of something softer. A memory. A single kindness in a life without mercy. Something small. Something almost human. But for now, rest. You've outrun them again. And for tonight, that is enough. There aren't many memories you keep. Most you let go of. You have to. There's no room in your mind for warmth when every step might be your last. But one memory stayed. You don't remember exactly when it happened, or even where, but it was cold, and your ribs were bruised, and your last job had ended messier than planned. You'd walked for 2 days through wet fields and black trees until you reached a village so small it barely had a name. You weren't there for a job. You were just trying to disappear. You found shelter in a barn, collapsed into straw, didn't even remove your boots. The fever came in the night. You remember shivering, your breath rattling, the pain spreading through your chest like fire under skin. And you remember a face, an old woman, worn hands, eyes that had seen too many winters. She didn't speak. She just looked at you, lying there, half dead, and more shadow than man. Then she nodded, left. You thought she'd report you, or worse. But an hour later she came back with a bowl, hot broth, nothing more. She set it near you, didn't ask your name, didn't demand a story, didn't ask for coin. She just said, "Eat, then sleep." And you did. You don't remember sleeping that deep in years. You woke in the morning, and she was gone. The bowl was empty beside you, and the fever had broken. You left that day, didn't speak, didn't look back. But before you vanished down the road, you left a silver coin beneath the bowl. It was more than she'd expect, more than you could afford. But it didn't matter, because for one night someone had treated you like a man, not a threat, not a tool, not a curse, just a man. You think of her sometimes, when your hands shake, when the wind bites, when your belly is empty and your soul feels even emptier. You think of that warmth, that moment, and you wonder, did she know what you were? Did she see it in your eyes? Did she feel the weight of what you carried? And if she did, why didn't she run? Why didn't she scream? Why didn't she turn you in for coin or safety or fear? Maybe she'd seen worse. Maybe she didn't care. Maybe she just believed that every creature, even one like you, deserved a bowl of warmth now and then. You'll never know, and you'll never go back, because that moment is perfect, and returning would ruin it. The place may have burned, she may be dead, but in your memory she still walks the path each morning, still tends the garden by the door, still leaves bowls where they're needed, and in that space you are still human. You hold that moment like a gem in your pocket, small, cold, precious. You never speak of it, never even whisper it to yourself aloud. But in your darkest hours, it's there. When the blood won't wash off, when your eyes sting from smoke, when your blade feels heavier than your body, that memory whispers, you were not always alone. You don't dare believe it, not fully, but for a breath, a heartbeat, you let it in. And sometimes that's enough to take the next step, to wake up again, to choose silence instead of collapse. Because even in a life built on death, there was once a moment of life. Let it stay with you now, not loud, not bright, just quiet, just warm, like a candle in a dark room, too small to see by, but enough to feel. Hold on to it, let it flicker, let it breathe with you, and when you close your eyes tonight, let that face be the last one you see, not your victims, not your clients, not the ones who betrayed you, just her, and a bowl of broth, and a place where, just once, you were allowed to be nothing more than tired, and nothing less than alive. Sleep now, the road waits, but not yet. Let the memory stay. Let it carry you gently into the quiet. They call it cowardice, the poisoner, the whispering death. A blade is noble, they say, fast, honest, but poison, that's betrayal, cowardice, the path of the snake. And maybe they're right, but maybe that's why it works. Because a sword demands presence, a knife needs you close. Poison, it waits. It doesn't breathe. It doesn't blink. It doesn't flinch when the guards pass. It sits in a cup, in a slice of pear, in a kiss, and it remembers. But make no mistake, poison is not easy. In fact, it's harder than the blade, because poison has rules. It's a science and a gamble, and sometimes a lie. You've learned that the hard way. In the early days, you thought it was simple. A few bitter herbs, ground fine, slip them into wine. Wait, but the first time you tried, the man vomited and lived. The second time, he spat it out, claimed it tasted like wet coins. The third time, someone else drank it. An innocent. You never used that herb again. And after that, you studied, not in books, not in towers, but in kitchens, in fields, at the feet of old women who spoke in riddles and stirred their tea 3 times before drinking. You learned the difference between sleep and death, between paralyzing fear and silence. You learned timing, because some poisons take minutes, others hours. Some work better hot, some lose their sting in soup, and all of them require certainty. You never get a second chance. And worse, you're never really sure it worked. Not until the target goes still, or foams, or bleeds, or simply never wakes up. And sometimes they do wake, just long enough to point, to scream, to accuse, so you don't linger. A poisoner never stays to watch. You leave before the cup is emptied, because poison is a whisper, not a scream, and in your world, whispers survive. You remember one job, a lord, cruel and boastful. His cook hated him. His wife feared him. You spent 4 days studying his habits. He drank honeyed wine each night, 2 cups, always warm. You found a cellar 3 towns over, paid a heavy coin for something that came in a corked vial, dark and heavy. "You'll only need a drop," the man said. He was wrong. You tested it first on a rat. Nothing. You added 2 drops, still breathing. By the 5th drop, it stopped. So you used 6, just to be sure. You slipped it into a warm bottle, posed as a traveling merchant, delivered it with a forged crest and sealed letter. You never saw him drink it, but the next day the castle bell tolled 3 times, and you knew you were already gone. No blood, no chase, no wound, just a quiet death, and a name wiped from the page. It felt clean, almost merciful. But mercy is an illusion, because poison has its price. Sometimes it fails. Sometimes the cup is passed to a child, or a priest, or a servant with shaking hands, and that failure stains your bones. You remember them, even if no one else does. You carry the taste of every mistake, bitterness on the back of your tongue. You've sworn off poison more than once, but you always come back, because sometimes the blade isn't possible. Sometimes the guards are too many, the walls too high, the witnesses too sharp. And poison flows where you cannot. It doesn't sleep. It doesn't fear. It doesn't hesitate. You keep your vials hidden deep in your belt, wrapped in cloth, labeled in code only you understand. You test them. You replace them. You whisper to them sometimes, like old friends, because each one is a promise, not of death, but of control. And in a life where control is rare, that matters. You once heard a priest call poison the art of cowards, but he'd never tasted powerlessness, never watched a room from the gutter, never stood outside a banquet starving while laughter echoed inside. He didn't understand what it means to even the odds, to tip the scales when all other weapons fail. You did, you still do. And while the world calls you coward, you know better. You're not weak. You're precise. You're patient. You are still. And stillness in your world is deadly. Let your thoughts settle now. Let the vials rest in your memory. Let the bitterness fade. You are not in danger here. No cups, no knives, no eyes watching, just the dark and the slow rhythm of your breath. In the next chapter, we'll step away from poison and into the end of all stories. Retirement, what it means, why it rarely happens, and why some assassins disappear not in battle, but in silence, forever. But for now, close your eyes, let your pulse slow, and sleep like a draught well measured, quiet, deliberate, and deep. There is a myth among those who walk in shadows, a quiet legend, rarely spoken aloud. It goes like this. One day, if you're clever enough, if you're cautious enough, lucky enough, ruthless enough, you can stop. You can walk away, disappear. Not just into the next town, not into a new name, but truly into peace. They call it the quiet place, a cottage in the hills, a ship bound for distant lands, a hidden valley where no one asks questions. Somewhere the knives are buried, the masks removed, the past forgotten. It's a lie, but it's a beautiful one. You've met men who tried. They believed they'd done enough, killed enough, earned enough. They thought they could build a life from the broken stones of all the lives they'd taken. But the past doesn't rot quietly. It lingers, and it always finds its way back. One man, Callan, tried to become a farmer. He bought land, married, raised pigs. He even smiled again. But someone recognized him. Not a guard, not a bounty hunter, just a boy, grown older, with a scar over his lip. A boy whose father never came home. Callan's fields were burned, his wife vanished. They never found her body. And Callan, they found him in his own well. Another tried to flee by sea, changed his name, took work as a deckhand, disappeared into the waves. But he made one mistake. He sang an old song, a song only men from a certain guild knew. One of the passengers recognized the melody. He never reached shore. You once knew a woman who vanished perfectly. She changed everything: face, voice, posture, country. She lived quiet for years, but she couldn't change her dreams. One night, in her sleep, she whispered a name. Her husband heard. He asked questions. She ran. They found her in the forest, frozen beside a stream, her footprints the only clue she'd ever existed. Because no matter how far you go, you carry yourself with you, and in your world, even memory is a weapon. That's why you don't believe in endings, only pauses, breaks between jobs, lulls between storms. You don't dream of a cabin or a family or a farm. You dream of stillness, a night without footsteps, a meal without glancing over your shoulder, a bed where you don't sleep with one hand on steel. But that dream is always just out of reach, because even if the world forgets you, you don't. You remember everything, and sometimes that's worse than being hunted, because the mind is a sharper blade than any forged in steel. You've thought of stopping, truly. You once buried your weapons, dug a hole so deep you thought no one would find it. You swore an oath. No more. No more names. No more shadows. No more nights spent waiting for screams. You tried to live, chopped wood, tended a goat, mended clothes. But each night the silence pressed harder, because the silence was not peace. It was emptiness. You didn't know who you were without the weight of the blade, without the mission, the tension, the clarity of purpose. The world was too soft, too bright, and your hands, they kept twitching, reaching, listening. So after 31 days, you dug it all up again. The knife was cold in your hand, but it felt like home. You left that night, didn't look back. You never buried your weapons again, because you knew now you don't get to stop. Not really. You can slow down. You can grow older. You can stretch the space between kills, but your story ends only when someone else writes the last line. And until then, you walk, unseen, unwanted, but not forgotten, not by yourself. Let that truth settle in you now. Don't fight it. There's peace in understanding your nature. You were not made for stillness. You were not born for happy endings. You were shaped by silence, by need, by the thin edge of steel and the quieter edge of will. And that's not a tragedy. That's just what is. So tonight, don't dream of the cabin. Don't dream of the goat. Let the illusion go. Instead, rest in the truth that you're still here, still alive, still moving, and as long as you move, you choose, and choice is power. Let that power wrap around you now, not like armor, like a blanket, warm, worn, yours. In the next chapter, we'll speak of the targets, not who they were, but how they watched the world, and how, in their last moments, they sometimes saw you and smiled. You try not to look at their faces. That's one of the first lessons. Don't see them. Don't study them. Don't remember them. Because a name is just a name. A mark is just a task, a job. But sometimes you do see, and once you see, you can't unsee. It's not the faces themselves, it's the eyes, the way they shift when they realize you're not a servant, not a beggar, not a guest, not there by accident, the flicker, the tightening of the jaw, the breath that freezes. You've seen that moment more times than you can count. Each one a mirror, and in some of those mirrors you saw something unexpected. Not fear, not panic, but recognition, as if they always knew this would happen, as if somehow they were waiting for you. You remember one man, a noble, cruel, cold. He didn't scream, didn't beg. He looked you in the eye and nodded, just once, a small motion, like someone closing a book. You left the room colder than you found it, because that nod wasn't defeat. It was agreement. He knew what he was. He knew what he'd done. He didn't need judgment. He just needed silence. Another time, a merchant, middle-aged, soft hands, smelled of citrus. He turned, saw you, and smiled, whispered, "Took you long enough?" You paused. Your grip hesitated for the first time in months. He poured himself a drink, took a sip, said nothing else. You did your job, but afterward you sat on the roof until dawn, trying to understand who he thought you were. You never found the answer, but the smile stayed with you, and sometimes, when the nights are too long, you wonder if he mistook you for justice. You've seen tears, too, not of fear, of relief. A woman once held your wrist as she died, not tightly, not in resistance, gently, as if to say, "Thank you." You didn't know why, didn't ask, but in her hand there was a small locket. Inside, a child's drawing. You left it on the windowsill before you vanished. You didn't take the coin. Some deaths feel like they've already been paid for, but not all are quiet. Some fight, claw, scream, plead, and those are the ones that echo longest, because you see them in dreams, eyes wide, mouths open, breath rattling like loose stones. You tell yourself it's instinct, that they would have done the same, but deep down, a part of you wonders, what if they didn't deserve it? What if the coin was forged, the story false? What if you were not vengeance, not justice, just a mistake? You never ask. You can't. That's not your role. You take the name. You take the coin. You make it quiet. But the silence sometimes grows heavy, especially when they look at you not with terror, but with understanding. You once met eyes with a priest, not an ordinary one. He was your target, accused of betrayal or heresy or politics disguised as piety. You don't remember, but when he saw you, he sighed, not in fear, not in sadness, but like a man returning home. He bowed his head, murmured a prayer, then looked up and said, "Tell me, do you ever cry after?" You didn't answer. He nodded. I thought not. You did your work, but you remember the prayer. You didn't know the words, but they echoed in you for days, soft, measured, almost kind. You never took a job from the church again, not because of guilt, but because you feared the next one might say your name, because that priest, he looked at you like he knew it already. Some part of you believes he did, not from gossip, not from spies, from the way you stood, the way your hand moved, the way your eyes didn't blink. Maybe some men are trained to recognize death when it wears shoes. Maybe you've stopped hiding as well as you think, but still, you go on. You tell yourself the job is clean, efficient, necessary. But you've come to realize something. They see you, not all of them, not always, but some. And when they do, you see yourself reflected, not the mask, not the name, not the reputation, you. And it's the most terrifying thing in the world, because it reminds you, you were never invisible, you were simply ignored, and sometimes that's worse. Let that thought rest now. Don't let it take root, just let it pass, like fog across the road. You're still breathing, still moving, still safe. Let the weight of their eyes fall away. You are not in that room, not tonight. You're here, in the dark, alone, but not hunted. Sleep now, and if someone watches you from the other side of sleep, may they only see the quiet, not the shadow, not the blade, not the end. Only stillness, only rest, only you. Somewhere along the road, you stopped being just a man. You became a story. You didn't ask for it. You didn't spread the whispers, but they came anyway, and in time you learned to let them grow. You heard the rumors in markets, in taverns, in alleys, between prayers. The one who never speaks, the ghost with no face, the man who poisons bread with a breath. You smiled sometimes, not with joy, with distance, because these lies kept you alive. People fear what they don't understand, and you made yourself impossible to understand. Some say you walk through walls. Some say you melt into shadows. Some say you've died and come back. You've never corrected them, because fear is armor and belief is a blade. In some villages they leave out salt by the door, not to ward off spirits, but you. Children whisper your name like a curse. Women clutch charms when strangers walk past. Men check the color of their wine twice. You never asked for myth, but myth protects you. And in your world, protection is worth more than truth. Even you have started to believe pieces of it, not logically, but in the quiet, when the moon is high, when the wind carries voices that never belonged. You start to feel like more than flesh, like something else, like the weight of silence given form. You've begun to watch your own shadow, to wonder if someone, something, follows it. You no longer sleep in the same place twice, not out of fear of discovery, but out of the sense that even the ground might remember you. You've burned your own footprints, watched them curl to ash. Once, a dog refused to bark as you passed. Another time, a priestess crossed herself when you ordered bread. She didn't even look up, but her hands were shaking. You began to wonder, could they see it? The thing inside you? Not madness, not guilt, just the residue of too many endings. You haven't seen your reflection in years, not properly. Puddles lie, mirrors break, and you've learned not to look too long, because when you do, you don't see a man. You see every eye that ever went wide, every hand that ever reached out, every mouth that ever gasped its last word into your silence. And sometimes you hear them, not voices, not exactly, more like pressure, like wind through stone, like breath across your shoulder when the room is empty. You used to call it paranoia. Now, you just call it presence. It doesn't scare you anymore. Not really, because you've accepted something most men spend their lives avoiding. You are not clean, you are not safe, you are not normal, and pretending otherwise is the real madness. You once heard a man say that sin stains the soul, that each dark act leaves a mark, visible only to the divine. But what if that's wrong? What if it's not the soul that's marked, but the air? What if you carry a weather with you, a pressure, something in your footsteps in your silence, in your breath. You've watched fires dim when you enter, candles flicker, birds go silent. Coincidence? Maybe, but maybe you've become a storm in human skin, not one that rages, but one that waits. And the waiting is worse because it's quiet, deliberate, unstoppable. You've learned to use this, to walk slowly, to let others feel the cold before they see you, to make the air shiver. Once a man tripped over his own feet just because you entered the room. You hadn't even looked at him, but he saw something, or maybe nothing, and that's what broke him, because nothingness is the deepest fear. You've made yourself into absence, and in a world obsessed with noise and color and meaning, absence is terrifying. They've begun to treat you like a curse, a fate, an omen. You are no longer the hand that holds the blade. You are the shadow before it falls. And even those who hire you hesitate now, not because they doubt your skill, but because they fear what it costs to invite you in. You've become like fire. Beautiful, yes, but it leaves nothing unburned. Let that settle around you now, not with pride, not with sorrow, just acceptance. You are no longer part of the world. You are what the world avoids, and somehow that is safety. In the next chapter, we'll speak of the end, not your death, but the moment when even shadows must decide, disappear completely, or be remembered by mistake. But for now, sleep beneath the weight of your myth. Let the whispers guard your dreams. Let the silence wrap around you like old cloth. You are not hunted tonight. You are only legend. One day it changes, not suddenly, not with a wound, not with a name, but with silence, a deeper silence than you're used to, one that settles in your chest, not around you, inside you. You wake before dawn, as always. The blade is near, as always. Your hand still steady, your breath still slow. But something is different, not broken, not wrong, just quieter. You realize you haven't taken a job in weeks, not because there are none, but because you've stopped listening. You walk through a market and no one looks at you twice. You sit in a tavern and no one lowers their voice. You've become background again, not because you're hiding better, but because no one is looking anymore. Not for you, not for anyone. The stories have moved on. New names have risen, new blades, new whispers. You are not feared, not hunted, not even remembered. You are nothing. And instead of fear, you feel relief. You find a town with no name on the map, a place where the sun rises slow and the trees lean forward like they're listening. You rent a room, small, stone, quiet. The woman who gives you the key asks no questions. You don't offer a name. She doesn't press. You sleep for hours, then days. Your blade stays under the bed, untouched. Your poisons go dry. You stop checking the window, stop walking with your back to the wall, not out of carelessness, out of calm, because something inside you has stopped running. You begin to do small things, chop wood, mend a boot, watch rain fall without wondering what it hides. It's not peace, not fully, but it's close, and in this closeness you begin to wonder, what if this is the end? Not of life, of role. What if the shadow has done enough? No one knows your face, no one speaks your name. You've buried every mask, every lie, every tool. You haven't killed in months, and still you live. No one has come, no hunter, no client, no echo. You walk one morning past a stream, and your reflection stares back, older, lined, but steady. You look into your own eyes, and for the first time in years, you don't look away. There's no guilt there, no hunger, just silence, and something close to acceptance. You do not smile, but your breath deepens, and that too is enough. You still sleep light, still listen to the wind, but it no longer sounds like pursuit, just weather. You still dream, but now the faces are fading, even the ones you thought would stay forever, even hers. You begin to forget the names, not on purpose, but because you've made room for something else. A moment, a sound, the smell of bread baking in a room you didn't watch for exits. And one day, you don't wake with a start. You wake slowly, softly, and in that moment, you know you've left it, not the world, the life, and there's no ceremony, no grave, no monument, just quiet. The story doesn't end in fire, or blood, or ropes. It ends in absence. You didn't die. You didn't surrender. You simply stopped being seen. And that, in the end, was the goal all along. Let that truth settle in your chest now, warm, heavy, still. You are not a killer, not today. You are not a name, not anymore. You are not even a story, just silence and sleep and wind and the soft curve of a shadow that no one follows. In the final chapter, we won't return to blood or knives. We'll walk with you just once more down the road that leads to stillness, to the place where stories become echoes, and where even echoes rest. The road is soft beneath your feet now. You don't hurry. There's no need. No one is behind you. No one is waiting. The sky above is gray, but not heavy. The kind of sky that says, rest. Nothing important will happen today. And for the first time, you believe it. You don't carry weapons anymore, not out of defiance, not out of pride, just because you forgot. Your hands feel lighter, your shoulders looser. You've begun to walk differently, not like a shadow, not like a threat, just like a man. You nod at strangers now. Sometimes they nod back, other times they don't. But no one flinches, no one reaches for steel. You are not seen as a ghost, not as a myth, just another face in the market, another step on the path. And in this anonymity, you find something close to peace. There's a bench in a village square you sit on sometimes. You watch the children play. They run, fall, laugh, and you don't tense when they scream, because not all screams mean blood. You know that now. You learned it late, but you learned. A boy once asked you if you were a soldier. You paused, thought about it, then shook your head. No, you said. He nodded, believed you, ran off to join his game, and you sat there heart quiet for a long time. Later, an old man gave you an apple, said nothing, just handed it to you with a hand that had seen too many winters. You ate it, core and all, because somehow it tasted like belonging. You've forgotten so many names, but now you don't mind, because you've also forgotten the sound of steel drawn in anger, forgotten the way fear makes you move faster than your thoughts. You still sleep light, but you sleep. Dreams come, sometimes strange, sometimes cold, but they pass. And the faces, even the ones you feared would stay forever, they blur, they soften. You no longer wake to their eyes. You wake to bird song, to wind, to a world that no longer knows your steps, and you are thankful. You've stopped waiting for the end, because the end already came. It came quietly. No blade, no chase, no scream, just stillness. And from that stillness, something new grew. You, not the assassin,